Welcome back to the Built on Air podcast. This is episode 6 of season 17. Good to be back with you. Excuse me, recovering from a little cold. Dan Feller's with Ali and Camille as always, and want to welcome special guest Tom Halloran with us. Welcome, Tom.
Hi there. Great to be here.
Good to have you with us. We'll learn more about Tom and his story later in the show. So I'm going to walk us through what we're going to be talking about today. We always do 4 segments, an hour-long show. We start with our Around the Bases to keep you up to date on all the news and information on Airtable. Then a quick shout out to our sponsor, On2Air. Then we'll learn about Tom and his background and story. And then he's going to be sharing a cool base that he's got or a tool to build bases using AI. Then a shout out to join our community. And then Camille's going to walk us through interfaces and conditional logic. So with that, start with our Around the Bases. Last week, we did something new we'd never done before. We did a special segment of the Built on Air podcast. We had Max Bernstein on talking about the Super Bowl in preparation for the Super Bowl. And he shared a base that he built with his 8-year-old son to help him get excited about the NFL playoffs, where they could track all the scoring and everything. And it was kind of a fun project that he did with his son. So we did a special episode of that on Thursday to walk through that. So it was pretty cool.
You can't really see my shirt, but
yeah,
we're still celebrating.
Camille was very happy about that. It was a great game. It was exciting. Went into overtime. So because of that, we had to also leverage Aaron, of course, leverage this incident that happened in the Super Bowl. Travis Kelce yelling at Andy Reid, the coach. And so Aaron says, in Airtable, they're called records, not rows, and fields, not columns. You're thinking in spreadsheets when you should be thinking in relational databases.
I do find myself every now and again, I'll call them columns because most of the time I'm looking at it in either a grid or a list view. But yeah.
So this meme's going around of the player kind of pushing the coach a little bit and getting in his face over not being in the game. So yeah, thanks for that, Aaron. Good to see it's being used in the Airtable world. All right, some other news. This one came from, I would say, a competitor to Airtable. I'm gonna hold on a second. I'm gonna give us some more room. There we go. Spreadsheet.com. I know I played with it. I never really used it for production or anything, but definitely played with it. They sent out an email yesterday to their mailing list that they are shutting down in the next month or two. So not even an acquisition, just completely being shut down, which I thought was disappointing. But there is some cool functionality in here. You could do things, like a traditional spreadsheet, but it had the relational database. Any thoughts on their demise?
This of the ones that came out around the same time, Spreadsheet.com was in beta for quite a while, or at least open beta, so I knew about it for quite a while, while some other platforms were coming up, and Spreadsheet.com seemed like the one that I was most interested in just because it was the most different. It really was a spreadsheet that was also a database, whereas things like Airtable and some of its like more closely designed competitors are really relational databases that occasionally will look like a spreadsheet, but not really. And so this one was definitely the most interesting of them, but I hadn't really seen a whole lot of it, and I wasn't necessarily searching for it either, so that could be why. But I don't know how big of a user base they were able to acquire in the time since they moved off of beta into official release.
Yeah, they in the email they said they had 1,000+ paying customers, which didn't seem like a lot. I was actually surprised by that. But they do have some big logos on their website: Walmart, a couple other big ones, Paramount, I think. So they did get some traction, but obviously not enough. And they said the reason to shut down was they didn't reach venture scale, and so likely ran out of funding and couldn't find a buyer. So I thought at least like Google would buy them, because maybe they want to incorporate some of that into Google Sheets, or even the name spreadsheet.com. It's got to be worth something. But yeah, I was kind of surprised because they had an interesting product. Yep. So there's that. Going into LinkedIn, we found a couple articles. If you like to hear from people that work at Airtable, there's an upcoming webinar with Alex McDonald and Anne-Marie Minit, if that's how you say her name. So this is next week on the 21st. And I actually met Alex a couple weeks ago in Toronto, and good guy. So that could be of interesting. It's on how Airtable equips sales and customer success to compete against anything. Very good. And it's put on by another group. It's not by Airtable. It's with the Competitive Intelligence Alliance. So if that fits your use case, check that out. Here's another one from an integration. I like to see other tools that integrate with Airtable. This one is called BuildShip, that I wasn't familiar with, but basically what it does is it's not a front end like Softer or Glide or something like that. It's more of a tool to build actually back-end processes, so cron jobs, ongoing processes, things like that. And so if you have processes that need to run, you could put Airtable as your database in front of that, and they now have an integration between the two. So I thought that was interesting. So if you need that, BuildShip. Let's see. We've got one also similar to what Tom's going to be sharing with the AI world. This one comes from Andy. He's been on the show before with this tool, Data Fetcher, that integrates with lots of different APIs, one of them being OpenAI, which has the image ability. So you can use that tool to automatically generate images that you might use for blog posts or anything. So if you want more functionality with OpenAI and ChatGPT, that extension is a good one for that. All right, we're on a tool kick. There wasn't a lot of other news, so here's another. This is kind of more of a tutorial using radar.com, which I'd never heard of, but it's an API to look up valid addresses. So if you have like a partial address, you can use this. And Joseph was kind enough to share his script to basically incorporate with this and empty it out. So here's the script. You can copy and put that in a script. And I also like these as well if you're learning how to write script, ways to learn from others, working examples. So this is a fairly easy one. Just calls an API and then updates each record accordingly. So that's a nice one to use. But does require, I assume, an API subscription to Radar to make it work. Enter an API key.
Very cool.
All right, here's one. This kind of comes up every so often, just kind of a reminder of like lack of response from Airtable. If you're not getting a response from Airtable, trying to reach out to somebody that's been waiting 6 weeks to get several questions answered. Apparently, if you post it on the forum, that might help. Unfortunately, that's not the way it should be, but it looks like the support team reached out to them after they posted here. So, so yeah, that's one way to get their attention.
Yeah, with the most recent adjustments to pricing, customer support was basically removed for business. No, what's it called?
Team.
I was trying to remember if Team was the new name or the old name. Team is formerly Pro, or formerly known as Pro, and if you're on the Team plan, you don't really get customer service.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't know what tier Big Red is on, but yeah, they do help. Yeah, apparently they do help a little bit, but there's no guarantee on your plan. So yeah, that is definitely a downside to this is common that people struggle with lack of support. So because of that, one way is, where do you go for help? And this is in line with this post here, asking where do you go to just interact with people. So one is where this is posted, which is the table forums. Scott Rose is very active here and runs this, and is pretty good at answering people's questions. But as Scott also suggests, the other one is the BuiltOnAir community. It's a Slack group that you can join. So thanks to Scott for giving a shout out there. Facebook also has one run by Ben Green and Chris Dancy, and Reddit. There's also an active community there. So those are some of the more common places to interact with experts. Any others? I think that's all of them.
It's my go-tos.
Yep.
Yeah. Those are all the free options too. So
yeah.
worth it.
And then one more tool I always like to see, competitors to Airtable. This was one I think I had heard of it, but I had never really spent time with it. So I just saw this on X or Twitter. Basically, they built so Retable sounds very similar to Airtable, but this is basically, they now have a import from Airtable feature, so it makes it easy if you are in Airtable looking for a solution. This is a paid solution and looks cheaper than Airtable. Anybody ever messed with this one? Retable?
Never come across it before. It also sounds like Retool.
Yeah.
It sounds like a cross between Retool and Airtable.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to think of. I was like, that reminds me of a different tool. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they've got some logos here. So yeah, it looks pretty similar. It'd be interesting, as we saw from spreadsheet.com. Like, I mean, we've talked about this a little bit, but the venture world is tough right now. Raising new rounds is extremely challenging. You do need to show very, very good numbers. So if any of these companies are dependent on venture funding, it might be more consolidation coming. So we'll see. I'm not familiar with the situation here. They might be bootstrapped. Don't know where they're based.
It does look cheaper. It does look cheaper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, anyways, if you're looking for alternatives or just exploring what else is out there, maybe take a look at Retable. Let us know if you like it. And that's sort of what's going on in the world of Airtable. Relatively quiet. No feature releases from what I could see. There was some outages I did see in our BuiltOnAir community. I think on Thursday there was quite a few people saying there was issues, but it may have been maybe at the Amazon AWS layer, because I guess other platforms were having issues. I don't know. Did you guys experience any outages?
I got the refresh the page error a couple times.
Yeah, it seems to be par for the course a lot of times. So yeah, I didn't experience any major, but a lot of people saying automations weren't running and things like that.
Yeah, a lot of the outages this year, I think they've been more frequent than I've noticed of last year around the same time, but they're less. The entire site of Airtable is down and you can't do anything, and it's more like silently your automations will stop working and then
Yeah.
they'll start working by the end of the day, but there is that period of time. So not great.
Yeah. And I did see yesterday, real quick, Bill's list watching says Retable will be recycled in 10 months or less. Bill is known for his predictions. We'll see. But yeah, I did see yesterday they posted that emails were not going out through automations, and but I think it did come back, so that wasn't working for a few hours. So if you were missing emails being sent out, I think that was if it was through their email, not like Gmail integration.
Yeah, I think it was for like the built-in Airtable emails.
Yeah. Cool. Let's move on. Quick shout out OnToAir. If you rely on Airtable to run your business, it's best practice to back up your data outside of Airtable into other systems. That's where OnToAir comes in, focused entirely on supporting and backing up your data outside of Airtable. It backups your data, your attachments, and now also your schema information. So check us out at ontoair.com. Use code BuiltOnAir to get a discount and make sure that you are backing up your data outside of Airtable. All right, Tom, let's learn a little bit about what you've got going on, a little bit about yourself. Have Ali ask some questions.
Awesome. Yeah, Tom, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, no, great to be here.
Excellent. Yeah, we're excited to have you here. So I think the best place to start out is how did you discover Airtable and what did that journey look like?
Yeah, I first played around with it a little bit in 2018, and I was using it as a bit of a mini CRM sort of thing. But so it was enough to just understand basically how it worked. But really, it was in the summer of 2022, so nearly 2 years ago. I'd recently I worked at Facebook before, and I left Facebook. And a friend of mine who had a startup got in touch with me to ask if I could help them figure out how to build a kind of data project. They were like, we're a non-technical team. We're setting up a new part of the business. It's about a 150-person company. They said, we're setting up a new part of the business. We need some data stuff. We're non-technical. We don't know what to do. Should we hire developers? Can you come and help us figure it out? So I was there for a couple of months over summer with this. There's a company in London and, well, New York and London. So I was with them for like a couple of months, listening to it, like trying to understand what they were trying to do. And then after a while, and they already had Airtable. They actually upgraded to the enterprise level while I was there. So they were already using Airtable quite properly. And anyway, and after a while listening to them, I was like, I feel like Airtable might be able to do what they're asking. So I went quite deep into Airtable and, started trying it out and reading all the docs and everything like that. And then I was like, actually, I think they basically wanted to build a kind of a little database, essentially, to keep it simple. But and so I think you could actually build all of this in Airtable. And then I said to them, look, I'll just build it for you because I'm already here and I know what you're trying to do. So I built them this thing in Airtable, this little database. We have mini extensions as a kind of little portal thing. We had Parabola, which is one of my other favorite tools, parabola.io, along with Airtable. And I built the whole thing in like a couple of weeks. I mean, I said to them, I don't know how long it's going to take me because I've never built anything as tool before. And in a couple of weeks, had the whole thing built in Airtable. And I was like, this is really pretty powerful tool. It's pretty amazing. And then the real light bulb moment, though, was I went to do some other projects elsewhere. And then I came back to do another Airtable project with this same client a few months later. And the original team, which was like 4 or 5 non-technical people who I taught how to use it, had sort of started adding all their own stuff on. They'd like, oh, we built some dashboards, we've changed these interfaces, we've added bits, And that was a real light bulb moment because I was like, this is really pretty remarkable that this team of non-technical people who've managed to get like a really pretty good data system going, and they can do some stuff themselves with it as long as it's set up right and they have a bit of training. And it was really quite a kind of light bulb moment for me. And they're still using this system. I spoke to my friend from there quite recently. So anyway, that was kind of how I got into it, basically. And I just realized that there's so many uses that I tend to focus on small organizations like 10 to 15 up to maybe 150 people, that kind of range, who are like not technical companies, essentially. but there was just so many ways I could imagine these sort of companies benefiting from, using Airtable. And I was like, wow, this is pretty impressive tool, actually.
It is wild how easy it is for a non-technical person to pick it up. I think it's a very intuitive tool. Once you get it, like I like how you mentioned that light bulb moment, because I feel like every user has one of those where it's like, oh, wow, this can actually like become like a launching pad for all these other things. Very, very cool. So I know the tool that you we're going to talk about today has to do with AI. Have you played with any of the built-in Airtable AI features yet?
I actually, to be honest, I haven't really. I haven't, to be honest. I don't really. I mean, AI has been sprinkled all over every tool, hasn't it? Sometimes they charge you a bit extra, sometimes they don't. Like Notion, all these tools just sprinkle a bit of AI on top. And I tend to ignore most of those. I think it'll be more interesting in 2 or 3 or 5 years what these companies start to do with AI when they really bake it in instead of just like sprinkling on top. So I actually haven't really played around with the inbuilt AI stuff, but I've been playing around with the OpenAI API and doing stuff directly where you can do a lot more stuff. You can sort of control a lot more stuff. So
absolutely. Yeah. I've also felt I haven't touched any of the built-in AI. Right. I think a lot of the tools that people are building are more useful.
I was just going to say, I also do think that, I mean, people often put Airtable in the bucket of automation, which is not really describing all of what Airtable does, but that's how some people in the world think about Airtable, automating stuff. And I've always thought that AI is a bit, at least at the moment, is a bit of an odd combination with automation, because with automation, you want to know that it runs exactly the same every time. And AI is just this kind of like, creative genius who comes up with all sorts of stuff. So it's quite an odd fit, I think, in some ways, to have AI built into a tool where you just want rock solid data structure, rock solid automation. You don't want unknowns in it. So I don't know, but there's obviously loads of use cases for it.
Absolutely. Do you have any predictions for like where that might go?
Yeah, well, certainly. I mean, where I am most interested in it eventually is in how it might teach people how a system works, or teach people how to start using, whether it's Airtable or actually, other SaaS tools. But Airtable obviously has a bit more, it clearly has a bit of a learning curve. If you just give it to someone for the first time, they're going to be like, I don't know what to do with this. I think there's, and Airtable have done a little bit with that, with their kind of base generator thing that automatically creates a new base. But I think this, one of the things that's really powerful about AI is it can help unblock you if you're stuck and explain concepts and give you sort of options if you're trying to build something. So I think the real big opportunity from Airtable's point of view, or one of, with AI, is helping people get over those initial barriers where they don't know how to get started, or they're halfway there and then they get stuck, that kind of thing. So a bit different than the consultant thing, but more that just people ordinarily day to day using it. And it's especially true if you can integrate your Airtable, if you're a company and you've got all your Airtable bases in your Airtable system, if that can be integrated to an AI directly. So when I'm Joe Bloggs and my team trying to figure something out, and I speak to the AI knows all of the Airtable bases in my company. It knows the documentation for all of the Airtable bases. It knows all the fields and so on. Then the AI is really going to make a huge difference to teaching me and coaching me and stuff like that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I could imagine it would be a really cool time if you can ask the AI questions about your data or about the schema or stuff like that.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh yes, definitely that. Yeah. There's loads of possibilities.
Wonderful. And so how did you get the idea to build the tool that you did?
Well, partly I was just playing around with various different things to do with the OpenAI API, but really, the origin of it is basically that I find if you're an Airtable consultant, it depends who you're speaking to. If you're speaking to someone who is technical or someone who has already used Airtable, then that's in a certain world, because you know that they know what you're talking about. So if you start saying base interface, you know that they know what you're talking about. But oftentimes I find myself speaking to sort of business owners or people in smaller companies, and they don't have any idea what Airtable is.
Right.
And you can sit there for an hour trying to use words to explain it, but because it's kind of conceptually new, they just don't really they're kind of like, yeah, okay, I don't know they don't really know how to visualize it or anything. So the best way always to get them to show them what Airtable can do is to show them something, not to try and describe it. And really what I realized is that, again, partly it was a frustration actually with the fact that, and I don't know if they changed it yet, but I was always trying to find a good example base to send to someone from Airtable. And Airtable have this kind of gallery, but they only have the base and not the interfaces, unless they've changed that. And I was like, well, you're not really selling it then, because you're just giving them. Anyway, so I wanted a better way to show someone what it can do. And also when I was speaking to, prospective clients, basically the best way to really get them interested in it is to not only show them a demo of a base and interfaces, but show them a demo of a base of interfaces where it's the data that their company recognizes. So if it's a construction firm, they're going to be like, well, we've got construction workers, we've got projects, we've got finances, materials, whatever. That's the sort of data that would make sense to them.
Mm-hmm.
So the origin of this was, what is the way that you can really get someone who from like 0 to 60 who doesn't know anything about Airtable suddenly to be like, wow, I can really see how this would fit into my company. And the way to do that is custom personalized data. But obviously, if you're going to do that manually and go in, try and create as a project, it's just it's not enjoyable. It's very laborious, very time consuming. So the origin of this was, it was a bit of an experiment to see if the AI can do it. But the origin of this was, can we get the AI to create loads of realistic, joined up dummy data, so that then you can knock together a demo in like half an hour, and then show it to someone and be like, this is like almost exactly what your company is interested in buying, basically. Bring it to life, bring the Airtable to life.
That's so cool. Yeah, I love that, because I've found myself in that position before, trying to explain it to somebody, and you're right. They're not going to get it. You could show them examples, but if it's not something that they're going to relate to, then they might just tune it out. So that's super, super cool.
Yeah. It's exactly that. You got to got people to show people stuff. If it's new, if it's conceptually new, they don't. I always say it's a cross between a spreadsheet and a database.
Right.
If people aren't technical, even saying a database is they still can't really visualize what that means. They'll just think of a spreadsheet.
Absolutely. No, I relate to that very, very much.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. I think I'm really excited to see the tool. I think I could already foresee use cases for it. That's awesome.
Yeah. And Tom, you're based where?
I'm in London.
You're in London. Awesome.
Yeah.
And you run your consulting firm is called?
My consulting firm is called No Code Paradigm, which is No Code Paradigm. Yeah. So I do Airtable consulting and some stuff to do with AI. Yeah.
Yep. Awesome. So people can find you there. So if you want to start sharing your screen.
All right. Let's do it.
Get into your base on how to use AI to build more bases.
Yeah. And I mean, a caveat, this is like a prototype. Okay. So
fair enough.
It's a prototype that just I've been using up till now. So can you see my screen there?
Yeah.
Yeah. And can you see Airtable there?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So I built this in Retool, as I mentioned before. I built this in Retool, and this Retool is connected. On the one hand, it's connected to my Airtable base, which is here. And on the other hand, it's connected to the OpenAI API. So it's going to go and ask OpenAI for some data, and then it's going to go and put it in Airtable, essentially, is what it's going to do. And so what I've done here, this is an empty base, right? So it has all of the structure. So imagine that I did a bit of work with an architect's firm in London, so that's where the inspiration comes from, right? But this is an empty base, but it has a few columns here, obviously, or fields. I should call them fields, shouldn't I? According to that meme from earlier, not columns. So we've got project. This would be a list of projects. This would be a list of employees, and this is a kind of resourcing map. So obviously it's empty at the moment, like that. So what we're going to do, come here to Retool, give it a bit of information. All of this is going to get sent off to OpenAI. So give it a bit of information about the project that you're working on and the base ID. And then if we do that, and then so we can see it's pulling back those tables, the table list from the base. So it's connected. So this is the main bit here, right? Here. So what we'll do first is do the employees table. So you can see that it's excluding any automatic. I'll show you this next time actually, because probably let's get rid of that. These are the fields that we want to create data for. So go like that. We'll ignore this for now. So we'll pick a GPT, and then we're going to say let's create 15 records. So I'm telling ChatGPT what sort of data I want. Don't make calls. Okay. Okay, so some instructions. So let's see if this let's see if it works. Oh, I see, because that thing is, oh, that's why. So one thing about the AI is that it's really pretty slow. So it can take like 30 seconds, 60 seconds, something like that to come back with any results, which is a bit of a pain, but that's just, it's a new technology and it's still.
I'm curious with Retool, when you're hitting that generate data, is it running a script or does Retool have an integration with OpenAI?
Well, that's a good question. So Retool, yeah, you can either make Retool just connect to any API, but they have a load of out of the box connectors. So they do have an out of the box connector for OpenAI. So it's fairly, if you don't mind playing around with this stuff, it's not too complicated to figure out how to configure Retool to connect to your OpenAI API. Once you set up, you have to have an account with OpenAI. So we've got some data here. Like this, 15 rows as we asked for. So what we'll do is we'll just, so let's get here and then do that. Okay, so all the data is in Airtable, and we just have a quick look at it. It's got the emails right, because I told it was called XYZ Architects. It's got decent emails there. You didn't see the roles before, but these were the roles that I already had. So what it's done there is it's had a look. It's gotten the whole schema. So I should say a little bit like behind the scenes, I'm also sending it the whole schema for the whole Airtable base, along with a load of other guidance and stuff. So that's how comes it knows like which options it can choose from here. And I'm trying to show the quality of the data it gives here. So I've told it between 50 and 100K salaries, which is about right. I also said before that the company had been running about 10 years. And if we look at that, it's pretty good. It's remembered that and factored that in. So this is like quite plausible, I would say, for an architect's firm in London. So if we go back now and then go, so, okay, cool, got that. And then we'll do project list. So I'll show you a bit more. I mean, what this is doing is excluding anything which is automatically calculated, because obviously a roll up or a formula Airtable is not going to do. So we're going to get rid of that one. But then we want to create these. So we're going to create some projects. Skip that. Skip that. So create 10.
Bill French asks on the comments if you ever use AI to help you generate these prompts.
Well, it's a good question. I mean, the problem is that this is the scenario is that you've had a conversation with a new prospective client. So this is the stuff that's in your head mainly, if you know what I mean. Like, yeah. And so at some point you have to download what's in your head a little bit. Yeah. But yeah, you could do. length, let's say 50.
And you might have mentioned a second ago, but for so you have the meta information, so like the drop down options, you're telling the API here's your options, or are you creating on the fly new roles?
No, I along with the stuff that you can see here behind the scenes, I'm also every time sending it the entire schema for the Airtable base, and in that schema is listed the options.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
yeah, and one. Oh yeah. It does take a little bit to list. Let's see if it gets this.
And there's a tool out there that we never had on the show. I don't think they're still working on it. But they actually used AI with the meta creation API to actually create your schema. Taking that, incorporating that functionality.
Yeah, that's exactly. Let's try this one now. So we'll let that run. Yeah. And I think Airtable did something like that where it creates a bit. Personally, I'm a little more, I don't know, it might be nice for someone who has no idea how data architecture or structures work, which is fair enough when using Airtable. I'm a little more skeptical of that because I think the design of the base and the architecture is like quite a high level skill and is quite a foundational part of the understanding of like what the client wants to do. And I'm a little, I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
Yeah, but no, it's pretty interesting. To be fair, I haven't used them. They might be really pretty good. So we've got some things here. So if we just, we got this one project list. So there's nothing in there. And then we'll add them. There we go. So now we've got some projects. And just quickly, we've got budgets are about right. And I mean, this is quite advanced. I've told it to set summers in progress that are finishing in the future. Summers complete that finish in the past. It's all about creating like realistic data. And it's messed up those two. It's messed up these ones, unfortunately. And it's got those ones, but I think that's because my instruction wasn't that good. So let's try then. So what we're going to do now is, and this is the big part of it, if it can get it. The idea of this resourcing table is matching people to projects and their allocation on the project. So what we're going to do now is to start again. And now we're going to try and create the resourcing table. Whether these ones, yeah. But what we're going to do now is send the data that is already in another table. So now I'm going to get the project list from here. This is our project list that we just created. And then we're going to go and get the employees and add that. So now we're going to send not only the schema and all of this instruction, but also all of the data from the other two tables. So I'll just write out this bit. All right, let's try that. And this one will take a little bit longer because we're giving it so much information. It does actually time out at like a minute and a half, so hopefully it doesn't time out. But I think one thing to say that is a bit unusual about the AI that people might not realize is that when we've just made that request, it doesn't have any memory. So when I've just made this request then, it's like OpenAI have never seen any of this. They've never seen this application, this retool app. They've never seen any of this data. It's reading all of the behind the scenes instructions, the schema, all of these instructions, all of this stuff up here, all of these extra bits of data, and then generating that report. That was pretty good. That wasn't too long. So there we got some data, and then we'll put it again. So yeah, it was also. So send that to our table. Okay. So now we've got a map of people and what project they're assigned to. So if we group it by project, I asked it to have 2 to 4 people on each project. So it's done that reasonably well. I did ask it to have a project manager on each project, although you could say that I worded it a bit vaguely, but it hasn't quite done that. So we've got that, and then I don't know, maybe we could group it by the employee instead. And this would be like for an employee, it doesn't, I try to get it to understand this allocation. It doesn't really quite understand it, it's close. But anyway, the point is now there's all this data in it, right? If I was going to show them these little interfaces, I should have showed you these before when they had no data, but you know what charts look like in Airtable when they have no data, there's just nothing there. So now if you were to show them like a quick mock of a dashboard, it actually would have like quite a plausible, it would look quite realistic to an architect's firm because it's got profitability, projects here. They could go and look at their employees and see like, all of their employees, stuff like this, see what project that person's on, see what projects that person's on, and so on. And so the idea is it's definitely not a finished, it's obviously not supposed to be a finished product. It's supposed to be enough that you can put this in front of a client and they'll be like, light bulb, I get it. I get how this would work in my business because you brought it to life with this data. And really the reason that, the motivation for doing all this stuff in Retool was that I was doing this in ChatGPT and then downloading the data in a spreadsheet and uploading it, which is sort of okay, but then you can't do this thing of link. It was not going to understand a linked record then.
Right.
So we want it to actually kind of start to create a proper joined up base with linked records. And again, like if you show someone an Airtable base who's never seen it before and there's no linked records, you're not really demonstrating what the product does very much, are you? Because it's a relational database. So yeah, there we go. That's that's the demo.
We have a few questions from Bill. Let's just put one on here. Yes. Does the pipeline to the LLM store and potentially utilize your schema prompts and base information for other purposes?
I'm not sure I follow what he was. I'm not sure I follow quite what he was asking there.
I think he's saying like. Yeah. I think you explained it that basically every time you're running the script, it's starting new. It's not storing that,
Yeah. Well, it is true, right? So the way Retool, if I hit refresh here, it will forget absolutely everything and it will be right back to the beginning. So and it's only a prototype, right? So I've not built Retool yet to have any memory. The way you would have some memory in Retool is it would have a little database, which they give you in Retool, which would keep track of all your bases. And then you could say, okay, let me go into this base, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, that could be a net. If you're going to flesh it out and build it out, you might do that.
Yeah. Or I know like OpenAI, this might be what he's getting at, is OpenAI has a product now where you can keep it in memory and kind of create your own LLM and store it at the OpenAI level. Maybe
if they do, I don't, as I know it from my experience building with the API, it doesn't have, I know he might be right. Yeah. So I think some of the new changes they built to the API, they did build in some memory around chat threads, but I haven't looked at that yet. I treat it as each time it's completely brand new.
Yeah.
At the moment.
No, that's cool. What's the plans for it? Are you planning to productize this and release, or just kind of?
I don't know. At the moment, it's quite useful for me.
Yeah.
But if there was interest, I would. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Anybody watching, if this is of interest, reach out to Tom. Very cool. That's awesome to see and see how that works, especially the linking. I think is a cool piece that you added to it. So very cool stuff. All right, let's move on. Thank you, Tom, for sharing that. And quick shout out to join our community where thousands of Airtable users and fans are congregating and talking about Airtable and asking questions. So join us at builtonair.com/join. Join for free to get in the Slack community. With that, Camille is going to show us some cool stuff and interfaces.
All right. So relatively recently, Airtable announced that there were some updates to interface detail pages and also specific types of forms in Airtable, mainly the interface versions of it. And there were a couple of different updates that came all in the same batch, but I'm specifically going to talk about conditional logic in the case of detail pages. That includes both the side sheets and the full screen versions of it. So I haven't used this base in a while. This is my demo that I've shown on the show before that automatically links certain records to a report. That's some time period. That could be either a year, quarter, month, week, etc. And then you could see I have certain log records linked into each one. And the way I'm going to demonstrate some of the utility of having conditionally visible groups or sections on your detail pages is that you don't necessarily have to redesign the same page twice. So really quick, looking at the data structure, I have a field that's called subreports. So for the whole year of 2021, that's how long ago this base was made, you have every period that happens during the year 2021. So all of the quarters in it, all of the weeks, all of the months. And then when you get down to the level of month, only week is the smallest time period underneath that. So it only has 2 subrecords. So looking at an interface, I would start by just filtering the page of all reports to just show me the annual ones. And I would click into it, and then I would get the same linked record field presented as a gallery view split into 3. So each of these representations of that same singular link field has a filter on it to just show the quarters, just show the months, or just show the weeks. And then underneath that, all of the log records that are inside of the main record I'm currently looking at, in this case, the year 2021. So I would be able to click on any of these. Let's go to quarter, and you'll see there's no quarters underneath the quarter, but there are months and there are weeks. If I go to weeks, it should have nothing underneath it and just the whatever log was there for that particular week. And this is fine, but what I don't want to do is have to create a different interface design for each type of time period. I don't want to have a separate one that just shows me months or a separate one that just shows me quarters. So what I can do now, thanks to the update, is I would be able to click on a whole group and then scroll down to visibility underneath rules. The fact that rules kind of has its own section and only one thing in it makes me hope that in the future we get some additional rules underneath it. I don't know what those might be, but based on what I can do now, you'll notice very similar UI for this. It works the same way as regular filter, but now I could go if friendly name contains Q, for instance. And actually, no, I want to do year. And to explain what's happening, it's looking for details on the full record I've clicked on. And for clarity, let me unhide some fields so you guys can see what data I have to work with. If I do all that, you can kind of see some of the values that I have to play with. And now if I go back to visibility, I should have more selectable things to base my visibility filter on. So if I change it to time unit includes, contains year, this will be hidden. It's actually the opposite of what I want. I actually want it to be does not contain year. And then this should be hidden. And then I would repeat that. So for months, I do want month to show up when the time unit of the thing I'm looking at contains quarter. So I would alter this slightly. Does not contain quarter. And now if I preview, I did this backwards. Live demos. But pretend I did it right. You'll notice that quarters is not visible. I actually wanted it to be visible and months not. So just remembering the sort of order of operations, when to use certain filters and when not. But that would allow me, as I continue to click into ones, you'll notice that what's visible and what's not changes depending on the record that I'm currently looking at, the main record in the detail page. If I go back to edit, you'll notice that there's some warnings that pop up. The first, not warnings, but notes, I guess. The number one is that this is available for business and enterprise scale plans. It's not available for team, which is a little disappointing. It'd be pretty useful, I think, for all levels of using Airtable interfaces. And then the second one, just as important, Airtable does not recommend you use this feature for the purposes of data security. This is more for just decluttering the page, I should say. You don't really want to rely on whether or not something is visible on the page, just because there are ways to get around it. And not referenced on that pop-up, but referenced elsewhere in Airtable's documentation. If you have conditional visibility applied to a detail page, and I believe also a form, and you were to open it up on your mobile device, the conditional groups won't show at all, regardless of what happens in your data. It just will decide not to show it. So it's not quite compatible with mobile devices for that reason. So maybe hold off on actually implementing conditional visibility until that's present if you are anticipating using it on a mobile device.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. I really like this use case too. This is really creative. I like it.
One of the things that I do a lot is, I create a dashboard or something for management, and then another one for your average staff member, and those always end up being two different pages or interface groups, largely because they just want to look at something and not necessarily because the data is, it needs to be secured for any reason. They're all looking at the same things, but one person wants to see it weekly versus quarterly, And so rather than designing two different pages, this makes it a little bit more feasible to design it once and then add a couple of tweaks to make it work for as many instances as you want. So some caveats: it would be great if if I could just have one of these linked record fields represented as a gallery view and have the filter on it itself be conditional. Instead, I have to have three separate linked records, each with their own filter applied, and then conditional visibility applied to it. That's not that big of a deal. It's fine, but it would be a potential improvement that they could make along these same lines. I talked about it when we referenced this feature's announcement. Is one more time going back into this view, the filters that you can apply are relative to the main detail page that you're on. So again, I'm looking at the year 2021 and only the fields that I have visible on the page. I would like to be able to reference myself as the currently logged in user. So not necessarily the field assignee contains Camille Parks. I would prefer if if I could have some other global filter that just looked at who was logged in and not necessarily who's tagged to the particular record.
Right.
And then secondarily, when you have nothing visible, so if I keep going down into my drill down, it now works properly because I set my filters up right. I go into November, I get down into weeks. So weeks doesn't have any of the visibilities turned on because it doesn't meet the criteria of the other ones. There are no sub units of time that I've identified for this particular base, which is great. But in instances where you have the record for November, but there are no weeks yet for, falling under the month of November, I would prefer, if I had the ability to set in my settings, going to visibility, hide if the total number of records is 0, which you can do kind of if you had a count field for November 2021. If the count equals 0, then you can hide the whole thing. However, if you're like me and you have a particular filter applied to this group, which I do, my filter is, there's so many clicks to do this. When time unit contains quarter, that would mean I would need a different count field for each of those possible conditions. So I'd need a count of quarters and count of months and count of weeks in order to do what I described, hiding the whole thing if there are no weeks that fall under this time period.
Right. And then you would need to have those counts visible on this page, right? In order to be able
Correct.
to filter them. Yeah.
Yes.
Which I want them to change that. I'd love to be able to apply filters that aren't necessarily visible without the field being visible.
I would agree. It's something that I missed when I was first playing around with it, is that I was trying it on a detail page that had a lot of stuff on it. And so I didn't notice at first, but this is a very, very simple base with not a whole lot of fields to begin with. And I don't want to see time unit month. That's just for some of these formulas to work under the hood. But in order for it to work, you do need to have this appear somewhere on the page. And if it works the same way as form views, the field has to appear before the conditional. I don't know if that's actually the case, and we can test that. Like if I move this down and try again, yeah, it still worked.
Okay.
So that's nice, that you could shove everything at the bottom and then have all the things that you want up at the top, but it still does need to be on the page.
Excellent.
Does it need to be visible? Could you put a conditional on that group?
Let's see. So friendly name should always have something in it. So I should say hide if not empty, or friendly name is empty. So basically always.
Yeah.
Still there.
Still there.
So I don't know if you can cheese it that way. What I have seen some people do is just call this like the utility section. And
wait, I think your visibility though, you said it's visible if it's one or the other. So that's always going to be true.
Okay, so hold on.
So if you just take out the second one, yeah.
Hold on.
Is empty.
Yeah. My problem is that I'm reading this as invisibility.
Right.
So you can hide this and have your conditionals that are based on the thing that is hidden still work. So that's a plus.
Yeah.
And I'm going to have to do some practice. I guess because I'm reading visibility backwards.
Right. When to hide. Yeah. Hideability.
Yes.
Yeah. But those conditions, if true, will be visible. Yeah.
Mhm.
I think I'm reading it backwards because if you don't have any filters at all, it will be visible. And so to me, this is an additive thing.
When to hide. Yeah.
Yes. So if the default is hidden, I should be defining, if the default is visible, I should be defining when to hide.
Yeah.
Instead, I'm clarifying when to show.
Yeah. That is confusing. Very good. Awesome. Yeah, I hope that there's definitely more improvements they can make, but this is going a long ways to make interfaces more usable and advanced. So excited to see what else they do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Once they add the ability to make it like user specific, that's going to be big.
Yeah. That's the next thing I'm looking for.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you, Camille and Ali and Tom. Thank you for coming on the show and sharing with us what you've got going on.
Absolutely.
Hopefully, people reach out to you and yeah, give a plug for your website again, where to contact you.
It's a no code paradigm, all one word.
No code
paradigm.
paradigm.
In the Slack channel as well. Yeah.
Okay. Yep. Or Slack. So, well, that's today's show. We look forward to seeing you next week on the Built on Air podcast. Have a good week, everyone.
Yay, thank you.
Thanks.